Welcome to World of Warships, and today we're going to be doing a What's Wrong with This Game review on the game in its current state, dated 12/9/2015. And I like that better than a straight up review because there's really a bifurcation between stuff that's good and fun to play and worthwhile in this game and stuff that really needs a lot of help and should probably not have launched into the state that it's in. Izukazi over here is in the first category, but up here 7, 9, 31 players. This is going into Thanksgiving weekend where we're going to have both 3x XP and a number of nice missions to complete, and people are available to play. So that's not too hot, and that gets at why we're having the bifurcated nature of this. We even have missions here to encourage people to play. They're all to be completed by 1st of December, except for this one. You get a port slot, which is gold value, and a million credits for it. And you'll probably complete that quite easily off on your own. It's destroy 2 ships, random battles, tier 4 or higher. And especially while you're going for all these things that are due on December 1st, back when this was recorded, the week before that. These are really nice missions with really nice rewards, and it's something that World of Tanks never had this early in its life cycle, and rewards were never really quite this good for stuff that was really achievable, straight up achievable, not get a hat trick or kill the entire enemy team or things of that nature. In this, you have 3,000 free XP. That's equivalent to like 60,000 free experience, and that you just have, boom, as a reward for destroying 15 ships. Plus you get some flags. So you think these would be good incentives to get people to play, but Board Gaming is still having trouble with that. And here's the cruiser one. You shoot down 100 aircraft, cost 50,000 HP and damage to destroyers. This is really play cruisers tier 5 and higher normally, and you'll eventually get that. The aircraft thing can potentially be the most obnoxious because you need to both have carriers and carriers that are bad at shooting down planes away from you, but you'll get it eventually in regular gameplay. I have no real problem with that mission. Then complete by December 1. We have daily missions as well. No events. So you think that would encourage people to play. However, when we go into throughout Thanksgiving weekend, the highest I was able to find with the 3x and those bonuses was 13,350. So a bit over 13,000 on the only North American server. World of Warships does not have split North American servers like World of Tanks did. And speaking of World of Tanks, here we go over 19,851, 26,404. And yeah, so much higher even on a game that's much later in its life cycle, and by the same publisher. And World of Warships' population decline has gotten a lot of attention from the player base because it does have a decline, and the population is low and never really got that high, even after the big spike of going into we were in release, and it's dropped and dropped and dropped, and people are debating why that is. And the thing is, it becomes self-perpetuating that low population doesn't make matches very well, and that makes people get frustrated with the game, understandably. And that leads to lower population. And this is the sort of thing that low population can generate. This is also from the EU server, showing what Matchmaker will sometimes resort to if you have a platoon heavy arrangement and you have a bunch of tier 10 ships. So what's wrong with this game? Well, essentially it launched in an incomplete state. And I'm going to look at armor here and I'll show you something along those lines. This is more information that you had on armor until very, very recently. It actually tells you roughly how much armor certain parts of your ship have. It doesn't have the turrets with the barbette on it, but you have some idea what, as opposed to 16 to 343, which tells you absolutely nothing. You know roughly what each part of the ship has, and you know your citadel's inside your ship, and you know roughly what the deck is, you'd think. And it's far more informative than what this used to be. You just get this silly survivability stat that is the same between the Congo and the New Mexico, and the same between a St. Louis and a aircraft and the Langley aircraft carrier, because it's based only on hit points, which is silly. But there's even now there's a lot more to this game than what this stat is showing you, and it's not stuff that's publicly available. And another thing it's not available is how effective is this against guns, because you can't actually get gun penetration numbers. Wargaming has them, of course, very, very exact, but they aren't publicly visible, even though that is something that's always been visible in World of Tanks. And you always knew how many millimeters you were likely to penetrate on average and what your variation was. Looking here, you have a 13.305 millimeter. New Mexico is not just slightly better protected than that, of course. And hey, this even has a thicker gun casement, right? So it's lacking some information here, and I'm going to go to a third-party resource, which is what you have to do to see how this actually shakes out, because Wargaming does not actually let you view the damage model, armor model, even though it is critical to how you play the game. So here's New Mexico, actually what it looks like in the game files, and you can see that, one, the turrets are much, much thicker. They're essentially impenetrable, 457 angled. But you also have this 343 millimeter bow plate, which didn't show up at all in those stats about how armored your front and back end were. And this is very relevant to how you play the ship, because it lets you angle and become virtually immune to armor-piercing fire. Here's again looking at Congo. Their turrets again have more than 203. The 203 is not all over most of the belt side of the ship. There's large sections that are less than that. And we're going to go down into the guts of the ship to show you how complex Wargaming has made some of these armor models. I mean, this is basically true to real life, and you don't get any of this information, which is very relevant to if you can penetrate the ship or not from certain angles of certain shells by playing the base game. And you don't get your gun penetration either. You have to look both of those up on third-party resources, if not historical resources. Here's Fuso, which is another example of how you have very critical information that's just not there. One, you can see how complex the armor scheme is, that you just can't, that being told it's like some number to some number doesn't really tell you anything even on the same area. And here is something that can get Fuso killed that you can't find out, is that the front bulkhead plate is only 241 millimeters, as opposed to the 343 on New Mexico. New Mexico is easier to angle, so this is how Fuso can get sunk. So looking back over at the tech tree, this game launched with 2 tech trees, US and Japan, and it still basically has 2 tech trees. The USSR and the Germany tech trees are single ship lines. They're not complete at all. And this is different from World of Tanks. World of Tanks always had 3 tank lines and then and started adding new entire nations as it went along in its perpetual, almost released state. You see how both of these work. You have battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and carriers, and a couple of premium ships off to one side. That looks like an awful lot of content to play. Like that's a lot of things I can take out of the garage. That's a number of different trees I can progress. Medium tank, heavy tank, light tank. If you're thinking of World of Tanks, aircraft carriers, they look interesting. You can put all those things in your port. This is the Soviet line, which is totally incomplete, and half of it's made up or never built. And is in the game basically to fluff Russian numbers, player numbers. And this is the German cruiser line, which is very weak at the bottom and is made up at 9 and 10 at the top. But the Königsberg, Admiral Hipper, those are both pretty good. It's sort of worth playing if you really want German ships. Most people are just grinding it out to get ready for the German battleships whenever those are implemented. And now we're going to go show why the US and Japanese trees are kind of exaggerated in the amount of content they have in this game. And we're going to play an aircraft carrier. We're hopping on the base aircraft carrier Langley and going into a co-op game, since I know that it's going to be a way to show to get all mechanics around and not have to deal with some damn tier 5 all-fighter Bogue carrier who's basically ruining everybody else's game and making no XP besides, because you can get a 4 and a 5 on both sides, and then hopefully you match off nicely. But we're going to go co-op. It's roughly the same at low tiers, and we're seeing something else as I'm loading into this, and I'm still loading. And this is another problem with the game, is that in terms of things that weren't finished on release, it wasn't just documentation. You have major technical bugs, and we're still waiting, and we're still waiting. And my computer, by the way, is way over recommended specs for this game. I run an i7-3770, I have 16 gigs RAM, I have a very good internet connection, good graphics card, can run it at 60, can run the game itself at 60 FPS in high detail, very high. This is not a computer problem on my end, sorry. And no, I do not need to get a solid state drive this game loaded on that to make up for that, because your minimum specs to play your game do not include a solid state drive. Sorry, Wargaming. And why am I irritated by this loading time? Well, we're gonna finally get in here, and even after with all that loading time, the match was already underway. I lost 40 seconds, which is a lot of time. I could already have my planes in the air, and I've taken a bit of a hit to positioning, but it doesn't really matter being against computers and also on a map this size with this size carrier. So we're gonna catch back up to things. This is why my personal opinion as to why I think this game was released in the state it was released in. As you can see, back in 2014, Russia under Vladimir Putin decided they were going to get into an economic war with the United States. At the same time, the Saudis were fighting a price war on oil against everybody. And so the Russian currency has just been destroyed, and that has destroyed and mangled the former Soviet Union economies where wargaming is based. And here's from Minsk in Belarus, where people were buying computers to use as a store of value against a rapidly inflating currency. Because you can buy it now, you can sell it later for more of your currency. This is obviously not normal. You can do it for electronics. That is a very geopolitical way of looking at a game release, but the consequences of that sort of economic hit, which has been completely devastating, worse than the financial crisis in Russia, that you need hard currency, and basically you want to get dollars as much as you can. Having that graph that is going up is basically how many rubles you can get with a dollar. So it's inverse. It's how good the dollar is relative to a ruble, and the short version is out. So you want to get dollars, you want to get euros, you want to get them. You need them really, and so you're out of time, you're out of money. You got to release the game, and that happens, of course, in countries without the geopolitical and currency pressure. Sometimes inexcusably, sometimes excused, but that you do just run out of time and money sometimes, and that's, again, it's not something I'm not unsympathetic to, but as a consumer, I'm still making a decision as to whether I'm going to spend my money and time on this game. So the market can be a cruel mistress that way. You have to release the game, and you're still stuck, and so you're up against other competition, and that's not, and you don't evaluate it as a consumer from the perspective of, oh hey, this game had to be released, we should cut them some slack. Here I'm going in exhilarating carrier gameplay 4 minutes into the game, and dropping 4 torpedoes onto a cat goal. Cat's being a pain. Dropping 4 torpedoes, excellent strike on the Wyoming over there. CPU opponent, not much you could really do as a PC opponent either in this level, which is one of the design decisions that Wargaming went live with, that you can see aircraft carriers at tier 4, and also the aircraft carriers go all the way up to tier 10 with excessively powerful carriers. Midway, where you could have just stopped at tier 9 and called those the tier 10s. Essex, Tayo with like the most serious, we're really the only out of top World War II carriers. But that is the whole aircraft carrier thing is that being this banality of an RTS, ridiculously simplified rudimentary, where you have the ship, you have your fighters, you have your torpedo planes. More advanced carriers, of course, have more fighters, but more groups on your hotkeys. But it doesn't really make it harder because you're usually moving in a classic RTS group as to attack. And I'm sorry if you. I'm just gonna be blunt here. If you think that this is a challenging RTS to play and you have fleet skills from playing a carrier, no, you need to go play some real RTS. You need to go play Age of Empires or like original Age of Empires, or let alone like play StarCraft. This is not a hard RTS. This is nothing really. And you do have to have carriers in this sort of view, and I'm able to also look around while I'm playing with carriers and actually see some of the graphics much better than I normally can with artillery and World of Tanks, which is the other top-down thing that people hate. But this doesn't really add a whole lot other than being able to look at the basic game, because you're still like kind of just seeing sprites on water with the distances you're talking about, and it doesn't change how you play the fighters. You're still going to move them around a little bit and try to get them on bombers and knock down enemy fighters over your anti-aircraft. This is not complex, and this is as a standalone game. This game would be absolutely terrible. You never would play this game, let alone pay money for it. As part of World of Warships, is it really World of Warships? Well, it doesn't have a whole lot in common with playing the other ships, as you can tell, and it doesn't even look the same. So I prefer not to even really count this as World of Warships content. This is kind of just I play my RTS with other players playing targets who are actually playing their naval game, and this is a long-standing complaint about carriers. And this is just one of the things that Wargaming could have ironed out more in closed beta, when people would have just had to take. They maybe just did not have any ideas on the mechanics, but they could have definitely fixed the balance a bit better. Like get the carriers out of tier 4, put the tier 9s at tier 10, get rid of Midway and Mercurio. Stuff you could do in beta because people have no expectations. But you go open beta with it like this, and then you go almost immediately to launch from open beta with changing very, very little. And oh look, now it's live. People have expectations. You can't just change things super radically without them getting mad, and they've had to progressively nerf, tweak at the edges with carriers, while you still have the fundamental difficulties of things like this devastating manual drop here that a human player might maneuver a bit better than this Wyoming does, but he's still fundamentally engaging other ships. So I could circle around with my UFO type planes, so thoroughly balanced there, and take another shot at him anyway. As it is, he's dead. And this is emblematic of some of the other stuff that Wargaming just went like Bill O'Reilly famous like F it, we're doing it live. That's kind of what happened here, because they had to get the game out. So you have the poor documentation, you have poor balance between battleships and cruisers, which they try to make up for with the obnoxious HE fire mechanics. You have game-breaking bugs that resurface, like the brief one where armor-piercing shells weren't able to actually go off inside a cruiser, no matter how well they were hit, and take out the Citadel. That was fixed, but never should have happened in the first place. Bad quality assurance. You have the carrier balance. You have numerous balance issues, particularly at tier 10, which is considered horribly imbalanced, and that the Japanese cruiser and battleship are markedly superior to the American, while the American carrier is the most horrible thing to see in the game, because it just is complete terror. In general, it's not balancing problems that causes the complaints, though. It's things like the vision system, or the carrier mechanics, or flooding, or fire, or the awful load times, the lack of documentation. In terms of why people aren't playing this game and getting really into this game, even when they open accounts, which is a lot of what the stats show, is that it's not that the Japanese ships are slightly overpowered relative to the American ships in certain tiers due to how people play in the game versus how one would actually play in real life, or how thought they would play in the game. Play styles can, of course, differ markedly between servers, as was with World of Tanks, the Russian server versus everybody else. That's not what was really bothering people. It's not what you would fix to try to fix this game. Is that it's really just a case where this is not a finished product, and it's 6 months later and it's still not a finished product, which is pretty dang concerning because it means that there's very little impetus to add content promptly or to fix bug problems like the loading problem or to rebalance HE mechanics, fix the Invisa destroyer, which has a very silly, frustrating counterintuitive mechanic where you can't see it until you can, and you can see it and you can't, depending on how it dodges in and out of a very specific range band, which is just silly with ships. And my carrier day is done. So with all that said, let's go over and look at the tech trees again, what we've launched with the US and Japan, and see what's actually in those tech trees. And again, goes to the level of content you actually play in this game. Here's the Americans. I've crossed off 4 ships that no one ever is really going to want to play because they're horribly outmatched in their games. You can cross off the destroyers as well. So that's just taking that off the top, things that you would never go back and play. St. Louis gets to stay because St. Louis makes the other ships' lives miserable. Now we're going to use some MAD MS paint seals, and I'm going to block off the carriers for being their silly little RTS off by themselves, and the higher tier destroyers for the fact that destroyers do not scale well from tier 5 on. Tier 5 is really the high point. Tier 4 and 5 are really the high points of the destroyer line, so that's not really very rewarding content to play either. Now I'm going to draw another fantastic MS Paint line here over the Atlanta and then down across tier 8, which I'm going to call that the paywall, because these are the ships that you either can't access at all without paying money, or it is real stiff grind, and certainly stiff grind after you get the tier 8s without premium account. And here I'm drawing a red line over tier 10, both because it's badly balanced and because the matchmaking is prone to that mess that I showed you earlier. And so there's your little box you can play. You can play 4 battleships, the equivalent of 4 cruisers, 3 destroyers. This is not a very deep game. Japanese are similar. I gave them more credit on the destroyers because low tier destroyers are abusive. I cross off the Miyogi and Izuma because they're terrible, and their carriers are a bit better to play because they have strike loadouts rather than the Americans, which are all fighter, and fighter could be done by an AI. I don't mean a smart AI either. So if you want to pay money to play this game, these are the prices you're looking at. 30 days for $12.59. You get a year for $96.49. Half a year at $57. You can buy doubloons, gold to get port slots and stuff if you aren't getting port slots for free, which you should. So that's what you're looking at, as an outlay to get over that paywall and to actually have some chance of playing 8, 9, and 10 ships without having to constantly grind money on lower tier ships to even run it. These are something you can also buy. You can buy a premium ship to help make credits. You can get an Atago for $47.86, Atlanta $41.16, lower tier ships if you want. The Suzuki Alpha is back in the store for some reason, even though it was an Alpha reward ship. Put that in perspective, I'm going to go over a couple of other MMO games here. And keeping those prices in mind. World of Warcraft. You want to play World of Warcraft like everyone has at one point or another? You want to go back into it? You can start Warlords Arena for $13. Subscription another $13. You can pre-order Legion for about as much as you can get the Atago for it, which is 1 ship versus an entire game expansion that everyone's really hyped up over. That doesn't seem like a very good trade to me. This is buying gold in Star Wars Old Republic. Knights of the Fallen Empire story-driven expansion. You get that for free as a subscriber. So you subscribe for 1 month, you have it. You just don't get future chapters unless you continue your subscription. Your subscription costs comparable to World of Warcraft, which costs comparable to the premium account in World of Warships, except that the premium account still sort of loses money on getting towards tier 10, whereas this is full access. Obviously, complete access to both games from their subscription fee. You still have to work, but that's it. And so now we're going to look at what those trees mean in practice. And we're going with Warship stats here. These are above average players. You can see like the win percentage. These are self-selected. They're better. These are better than a new player is generally going to do at this game. They tend to be beta vets. So let's assume that you get, as a working number, you get about 1,000 average XP per game. The Russians were up to 1,200. Everybody else was down around 900. Let's call it 1,000, just for ease of math. And we're going to look at what you have to progress through if you want shiny 9 and 10 battleships, which are really the big flashing draw for this kind of game, and the sort of thing that you have, that you probably were thinking of when you bought the game. Nice big flashy battleships, North Carolina, Iowa, Montana. And you look at how big some of these numbers are, both in terms of the credits and in terms of the XP. The XP is one thing, the credits are something else entirely, in that they, as I've mentioned, this game is not scaled the same way World of Tanks is. No matter how good you are, you're generally going to lose money on 8, 9, and 10. You will certainly lose money on 9 and 10. You can lose money on bad Tier 7 games as well. So this is, and I mean significant amounts of money, not just, oh, I got like 5K credit hit for getting my tire blown up by artillery. No, this is more painful. So 175,000 to research Iowa. They're 15.5 million on the credits. And these numbers already look pretty much bigger than World of Tanks, and I'm not sure why, other than they were supposed to be linked with World of Tanks, and then that never happened, because see the cash grab nature of the release, and we need money now, and letting people have all their free XP and gold from World of Tanks is not going to go over super well. So, what are we actually looking at in terms of gameplay here? And keep in mind that a lot of the games that you play in this game are going to be 10, 15, 20 minutes long. It's very uncommon to have a match, even if the other team is really bad, it's very uncommon to have a match that will end as quickly as lopsided World of Tanks matches do. And you generally will not be able to earn a lot in a match that is that lopsided. And of course, you can also be sunk at the start of a very long match. So we'll just keep that 10 to 20 minute time frame in mind. So now we're looking at Colorado. 19,000, 25,000, 44,000 XP to get the hulls. You have to spend that. You don't have a choice. If you buy them both at the same time, you don't need to actually spend money on the B hull. You do kind of need to spend the 1.1 million on the fire control and the propulsion and research the 15,000 there if you want the ship to be tolerable to play. These costs do not include equipment. This is just the ship. And the ship was also as expensive as a Tier 10 ship in World of Tanks, 6 million on its own, so quickly adds up to closer to 10, maybe a bit more, depending on what equipment you choose to mount. Now getting to North Carolina. You finally researched North Carolina, 120,000 XP. You got another 15 plus 20 plus 26 plus 57.5 to elite the North Carolina, and then 175,000 to go for your Iowa. And your costs here are significant: 900,000 for the engine, 4 million for the second hull, all sorts of stuff that is really not showing in the tech tree, but you're going to spend money on anyway because you need to. Again, does not account for equipment, which, by the way, can't be demounted without gold, which costs real money. And I'm not even counting trying to train your captain on that either, which becomes impossible to retrain them without gold at this point. So now we're on to the Iowa, 105,000 to elite the hulls, another 24,000 for the fire control, which you could skip because the Iowa already has excessive range. And the propulsion, which gets the Iowa back up to its historical stats, not even to its historical stats, but closer to its historical stats on what it could do in terms of speed, because Wargaming nerfed it. See, it raises you to 30.5 knots. The Iowa can do better than that. But so after all that, now if you want to keep going to Montana, Montana's 247,000 plus 105,000. Bang, right there. Plus you have to pay the money for it. And you see how these numbers add up, because you divide these games out by about 1,000 XP. You're looking at 100 or some odd games just to get the Iowa elite. on the hulls, more for the engines and fire control. Another 200 odd for the Montana, not including all the games you played to get here. And these are long games, so you can multiply that out just fine on your own. You quickly realize you're spending the better part of 2 weeks played to advance, even if you're doing reasonably well, getting about if you are netting about 100,000 credits per match on a credit grinder, and you're netting around the average 1,000 XP. So that is what you were looking at actually investing into this game to get through the higher tiers. And for the higher tier gameplay, that's really not very good because it wasn't fully balanced. It has many population problems, and just generally is not considered very enjoyable. People are very hesitant due to the repair costs, which are what make it unprofitable. The Japanese are similar in cost in battleships to the Americans. There's very little difference. Any difference you see is taken up in the hulls. This is a tier 6 battleship, which I already got through on New Mexico. So just quickly look at what is entailed with getting that. See, it shows you how quickly these escalate. I mean, this is 47,000 for a complete garbage ship. You can see how big of a downgrade the Fuso is. That's the other thing, is that you do not get to carry over research in this game, unlike World of Tanks. So you're always going to go from good ship to garbage ship. Good ship, garbage ship. You can't pre-research. And so you see 12,500, 78,500, 8,500. This is basically about 100,000 grind. And the catch with this is that while the battleships are the highest damage dealers and the most straightforward to play, the costs between carriers, cruisers, destroyers, and battleships are all very comparable. They differ to a little bit of a degree, but not typically a lot, and usually because of other stuff in the module tree. It certainly doesn't make up for their difference in damage dealing potential, and therefore credit earning potential. And this is particularly brutal with the aircraft carriers between the Japanese and the Americans, because the Japanese primarily damage ships. The Americans primarily shoot down planes. This is why I get the Japanese a more favorable box out on aircraft carriers, because, oh God, is it considered painful to play the American carrier line. Because you're stuck with useless dive bombers and fighters, or you're stuck with a stock loadout, and that's all you got. And that's how it goes up and through tier 8. So enjoy earning money and XP with those. That's really where you're kind of stuck on this, and why people aren't playing the games. It just is too large of a time commitment for the amount of support for the quality of the product. Like, this is not a quick free to play game. If you pay as much as they want, you're playing the equivalent of a AAA title that has full support, full real community management interactions, actual chat boxes, like you actually can talk in the game, actual persistent world to walk around in, various side diversions. It's not just sitting in harbor with an occasionally open chat channel, which I am not bothering with, and most people simply don't bother with, and it mostly contains occasional profanity and stupid jokes, like most chat channels do. And so, looking through the Iowa again, I would just like to contemplate. I'm just going to sit here and contemplate my Iowa that looks kind of nice, even if it's grayed out, and I'm probably never going to actually unlock it in this game. And you can contemplate how that stacks up as a financial deal, because again, it's your money. You're making the decision. You're not responsible for wargaming having to deal with a cash crunch because of stupid geopolitical reasons and bad budgeting. It's a nice Iowa. It really is. Really is.